Thank you, everyone. Hello and good evening. My name is Annie McGrath, and I am your new CEO and president at the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce. We are so delighted that you have decided to spend your evening with us tonight. We thank you for being here. It's so good to see everyone in person. I hope you're having a great time reconnecting with those that you haven't seen in a while, and we just really appreciate you making the time to be with us tonight. As we begin our gathering, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that our event today is taking place on occupied Salish coastland, and the Seattle Southside Chamber is located on the homelands of the Duwamish people. We pay respect to our Salish elders, past and present, and extend that respect to their descendants and to all Indigenous people. This copyrighted hybrid event is presented by the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without written express consent from the Chamber. We would now like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Thank you to our host and caterer, the lovely Doubletree Suites by Hilton, Seattle Airport, South Center, and Encore. We want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our presenting sponsor, Alaska Airlines. And we'd also like to thank our investing sponsor, Boeing. Thank you to our supporting sponsor, GISA Credit Union, and we have a short video from our friends at GISA.
GISA's financial education is at the heart of our community give back. Our outreach team does a fantastic job giving back to the communities, and we support them, but we also come alongside and support through our high school credit union program, our new WSU campus branch program, our affinity debit card program, and our youth and adult education efforts. We've been running the high school credit union program since 2000. I joined the team in 2013, where we kind of revamped the program to provide some real-world work experience to the students working in our branch and providing strong financial education to the students utilizing the services of our branches. In 2013, we had 7 high school credit unions in just Tri-Cities, and now we have 12 high school credit unions across the state. October of 2021, our education team expanded to the introduction of our WSU campus branch program. Our WSU branches are more aligned with our traditional retail branches than the high school credit unions. The high school credit union programs really just do transactions and start the process of opening new accounts. Our WSU branches truly are a full-service branch, and I'm very proud to say that GISA has the only student-ran branch on the campus of WSU. Not only do we provide the students an opportunity to run their very own credit union, we empower them to show their school pride through our affinity debit card program. Our affinity debit card program is a very unique way for our membership to provide support to the school district of their choice. And it's not just for students. Parents, alumni, staff, and any general community supporter can add on the debit card of their choice and support that particular school district. With every swipe of their debit cards, we are taking a portion of the proceeds that we make and sending it back to that district by way of an annual donation. So ultimately, our members, at no cost to them, are running a continuous fundraiser for their normal daily living expenses. Since 2015, this program has grown through the years, and we started with 3 school districts, and now we have over 21 partners that are a part of the Affinity Debit Card program. It has expanded from school districts to our local heroes as well. The local heroes process is the same as the Affinity Debit Card, but rather than supporting school districts, it supports a local hero population. Our financial education offerings consist of in-person and virtual seminars and workshops and experiential learning programs. The main objective of the experiential learning programs is to immerse participants into a simulation-based, non-traditional learning experience. Our financial education program has reached a lot of milestones since the inception of our programs, reaching 10,000 individual participants across all of our education efforts. Even in spite of a pandemic, we were still able to make a positive impact through financial education. We quickly shifted from in-person workshops to virtual live webinars, still holding over 100 individual webinars and education sessions and reaching over 5,000 individual participants through virtual sessions. These virtual sessions will continue, and we're excited to launch both in-person and virtual education offerings for our membership. GISA's new brand really affirmed what we've been doing for years was the right thing we were doing, and to provide us that affirmation that let's continue to do that, but let's do it better. It's a fantastic team that is driven to make a positive impact, and that's what we do.
All right. We'd also like to say thank you to supporting sponsor Lyft, and we have another video from Lyft as well.
Transportation, it could save someone's life. Some people don't see it like that. I see that every day.
We're partnering with Lift Up to provide access to safe travel for our youth and young adults.
We provide food to just over 39,000 people.
We connect with teachers, school communities.
But what comes up as a major barrier is transportation.
Our families need transportation to, go to their appointments or get to work.
Our community partners can physically get from their home to the food bank itself.
Having some support around transportation has been essential for helping those families navigate unnatural barriers that have been put in place.
Our young adults find their path.
That extension of deep caring.
Well, a single ride is not just a single ride. A single ride is a whole bunch of resources for perhaps an entire household that can last weeks.
And thank you to supporting sponsor Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And we have a video welcome address from our board chair, Russ Woolley.
Good evening and welcome to the mayor's reception. I'm Russ Woolley. I am the current board chair for the Southside Chamber of Commerce, and I am also the chief operating officer for St. Anne Hospital in Burien and St. Francis Hospital in Federal Way. St. Anne and St. Francis are part of Virginia Mason Franciscan Health, which is a proud supporter and sponsor of the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce. Virginia Mason Franciscan Health makes up 11 hospitals, 1,700 inpatient beds, 15 urgent care and prompt care locations. We also have the Franciscan Hospice House and Bailey Boucher House located in Seattle, which provides inpatient and outpatient services for patients living with HIV and AIDS. We also have the Benaroya Research Institute, which is an institute focused on autoimmune disease discoveries and research. Together, we make up 1,600 community providers, 17,000 team members, and over 5,000 nurses. This last year, we provided $56 million in charity care, $227 million in uncompensated care, and $305 million in community benefit. In the South King County market this year, we are planning significant investments of about $50 million for inpatient and outpatient expansion services so that this community can have great access and see the highest quality of care providers that are available. Again, thank you for coming and welcome to this event.
And thank you to our assisting sponsor, Amazon. Thank you to our event sponsors, Crane Photography, and Andrew is here tonight making us all look really good, Discover Burien, Westside Seattle, and South King Media. Scott and Teresa Schaefer of South King Media have been tireless advocates for our community, keeping us connected and informed and being advocates for small businesses and promoting them all over our region. Tonight, Scott is broadcasting this event live on Zoom so that people can join us virtually, and we are also recording the event so that those who cannot join us live will have access to this information at a later date. We will have time available at the end of this presentation to have questions of our panel. You will be able to use the Q&A function at that time. With that housekeeping out of the way, before we begin tonight's presentations, we'd like to recognize all of the local elected officials who are in the room with us tonight, and we have a lot of them, so thank you all for coming. Please stand when you hear your name. From the city of Burien, Mayor Sofia Aragon. From the city of Des Moines, Mayor Matt Mahoney, Deputy Mayor Tracy Buxton, and Council Member Jeremy Nutting. From the city of Normandy Park, Mayor Sue Ann Hohimer. From the city of Tukwila, Mayor Allan Ekberg, Councilmember Kate Cooler, and Councilmember Kathy Hogarty. From the city of Renton, Councilmember Carmen Rivera. And from King County, Councilmember Dave Upthegrove. And from the Port of Seattle, Commission President Ryan Calkins. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, and thank you for everything that you do in your communities. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Councilmember Peter Kwan. He gets his own applause since we left him for last. Oh, we have one more. Mayor Simpson. Thank you. And he is one of our distinguished speakers tonight. You think I would have noticed that right in front of me. Thank you, Mayor. And finally, thank you to our board, our ambassadors, and our members. Your dedication and support lifts up the Seattle Southside. We appreciate you all so much. Thank you for being here tonight. Our chamber is a nonprofit business organization that has served the communities of Southwest King County since 1988. We focus on business advancement and creating opportunity in South King County because we know that economic equity and development doesn't just happen. We have to work together to raise our tide, and at the chamber, we are proud to do that every day. We were founded on the belief that we are stronger and better together. In that spirit of collaboration, we gather here tonight with the community of the Seattle Southside to engage and connect with our local elected leaders. With a population of 140,000, the Seattle Southside region contributes over $100 billion in economic impact annually and employs over 70,000 workers. Together, our region is an economic powerhouse. And you may think that you know everything about the cities and the port that make up the Seattle Southside. From Burien's bustling downtown retail and restaurants, to the beautiful waterfront and marina of Des Moines, Normandy Park's green space, beaches, and trails, SeaTac's thriving hotels and tourist spots, and Tukwila's world-class shopping with the airport right at the center of it all to anchor it. Each of these communities has its own identity. But there is so much more to these vibrant and growing cities and the Port of Seattle. Tonight, we will learn more about the state of our cities and port and gain insight into the opportunity and challenges ahead for our region. And without further ado, it is my honor to introduce our first mayor of the evening, Mayor Sofia Aragon from the city of Burien.
Thank you very much, and it's very nice to be with all of you again. It's been a very long time. And so I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of Burien, and hello from our community. And one of the things we take pride in is that we really want to emphasize accessibility, walkability, the health of our community. So I'm a registered nurse and an attorney by training. And so I can't help but think of things in a health framework. So you'll see me talk about that quite a bit and weave that in my presentation. And so when you ask me whether or not Burien is on the right track to make sure we have the healthiest communities, I believe we are. Because healthier communities are not only active consumers, but they create strong workforces, okay? So one of the things that we're also very known for is a foodie paradise, and that I think owes a lot to the diversity of Burien, and that we are also working very hard to be inclusive, diverse, and also recently have been recognized to be a very creative community, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. So we want to make sure people know that you all belong here and that we have very pro-investment leadership. Some of the biggest assets that we have are the friendliest, and this is really important to people, permitting processes. And there's a lot of opportunity in Burien in terms of developing for what we need in the city and its growth moving forward. We grew about 20,000 residents in a 10-year period between 2010 and 2020. So some of the pro-investment programs that we have are a federally designated opportunity zone, multifamily tax exemption programs. I'll talk about the affordable housing demonstration program and efforts to attract business and investment programs called You Belong Here, targeting attraction of further retail and tech and office space sectors, which, as you know, is really important in a post-COVID world. So, and this is a picture of a 230 unit mixed use multifamily development that is growing our Burien Town Square. And it also included a $250,000 donation to the Highline Public Schools Construction Apprenticeship Program. And the project is scheduled for completion in 2023. So in terms of the demographics of Burien, it's pretty well spread in the spectrum of ages. I would look at it and say over half of our population are that family age, between the ages about 35 and 45. So we want to lead with equity as well as diversity when we talk about developing our programs. And so we as a city are actually looking at our own business practices to see how more we can support our evolving communities. We're one of the most diverse in the Sound, as well as our partner cities here at the table. For example, we're about a quarter Hispanic population. And what that also entails is making sure that we do more community outreach so that we understand more of what our communities need and what they can make them successful in Burien. And one of the things that we routinely do is make sure that we expand our language access and that we do invest in Black, Indigenous, and people of color businesses or BIPOC businesses, in community groups and youth programs like the Highline School that I mentioned. We've also been designated recently as a certified creative district by the Washington State Arts Commission because we're recognized to have a creative city full of artists, craftspeople, and makers. And we have a wonderful new maker space also in our downtown core. So our community events, we celebrate community, arts, and culture while driving visitor spending each year to our local businesses and support for local arts. What I really like about living in Burien is that we do have this central space where everyone comes together and enjoys the diverse cultures that we have in the city. And our local chamber, Discover Burien, is home to a commissary kitchen and the only publicly accessible makerspace in the Highline area. And so many products made in these spaces are actually sold at the Burien Farmers Market. And if you haven't been there, it's on every Thursday. The other thing that makes people's quality of life successful is making sure that their community makes strategic investments to meet their needs and implement some innovative programs to enhance public safety, which I'm sure is a theme across our cities. Economic recovery from COVID. I'm hearing nobody likes to hear that word COVID. Aptly, someone called it the C word, and I agree. But that's something that we really need to keep in mind as we move forward, because I think there were a lot of lessons learned and there was a lot of innovation coming out of that 2-year period. Also strategically investing in human service programs, youth programs, and of course, infrastructure so that we can support the growth that we need in the city. So in terms of public safety, we make sure we have a collaborative approach, meaning you could see here that our police department and fire, as well as human services, work together. We want to make sure that our police force actually focuses on those incidents where they're needed the most. So we are developing a co-responders model so that we have more mental health services when that's more appropriate to respond. And with ARPA funds and other funds, the city also approved $2.6 million to Burien's collaborative approach to public safety. And what this also supports is a neighborhood care coordinator, a downtown storefront officer, and as I mentioned, a co-responder mental health professional who will accompany fire and police personnel on call. And these are all in addition to our existing LEAD program, which connects individuals engaged in low-level crime to case managers who can provide that crisis response. Okay. So you can see a list here of ARPA investments in small business recovery. The majority of businesses in Burien, 75%, have 5 or less employees. So most of our businesses are certainly small businesses, and we've oriented this available funding accordingly. In addition to what I mentioned as enhanced public safety, there will be $500,000 in small business grants, $500,000 in small business lending, $250,000 in workforce development. And many of these categories, what programs that we will fund is not yet set in stone. We just want to make sure that those specific areas are targeted. So if you are interested in joining with us and being part of that investment, please come and talk with us. And then $250,000 in childcare business development. We saw in COVID, one of the challenges that families had in switching to working at home is needing more support for childcare. So that's something we invested in. Okay. And what you see there on the right-hand side is a new initiative called Shop Local Burien, where we learned that the businesses who succeeded had online presence, as you all know. And those who did not, didn't have as much of a chance of surviving. So what the city is doing is making sure that all of our businesses have ample online presence so that they have that resiliency in case we have another situation like COVID. Okay, and we do have an affordable housing demonstration program. So pre-COVID, the City of Burien committed to creating the 7,500 home units that we were committed to developing. And we still have an affordable housing demonstration program to make sure, that we have housing across the spectrum of incomes. Okay. So in 1 minute, what do I choose? Mosier Memorial Park improvements. One of the things we hear from our communities, again, a community of families, is to make sure that we have complexes that have a variety of space and is flexible for a variety of activities. We have a Miller Creek Enhancement Project. What this is a critical watershed in the salmon habitat. And what I heard, which is really exciting, is that there will be a distillery that will be built there soon so people can enjoy the beauty of Miller Creek as well as walk its trails. And we're also busily planning for the future, as like many cities are doing, is getting ready for their comprehensive plan major updates so that we are going to be hard at work envisioning what we want to see in our city for the next 20 years. And I hope all of you in this room participate in that project. And thank you so much for your time, and join Team Burien.
Thank you so much, Mayor Aragon. I'd now like to welcome our next speaker, Mayor Matt Mahoney from the City of Des Moines.
Des Moines is the place you want to be today. We're going to be one of the most exciting places. We're open for business, and I'm going to show you why in a little bit. First of all, a little bit about Des Moines, as you may know, is we have one of the largest coastlines accessible to Puget Sound, with many access points, 3 in particular: Redondo, Saltwater, and of course our marina. And anybody who's been there knows what a beautiful place it is, and it's a great and terrific advantage. Our town, though, looks still a little bit like 1962. And that's where the opportunity comes and avails itself, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And that's why I say Des Moines is open for business. Sites like this, Des Moines, this is our fishing pier. This is what we see every day. We're undeveloped down there, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but there's great opportunities. We've got some great businesses in our community, and we think there's room for more, and there's room for more residents, and we've got this great opening. So the first thing, last night, in fact, we had a public forum on our new marina development. We're talking an adaptive purpose building, dry stack storage, new restaurants, new shops, a community meeting area, a hotel, additional parking, and opportunities for some other shops down on the waterfront. The truth is, when they built our marina in 1970, they built it for 1970. The marina we're going to build is not for 2022, but 2072. And we're serious about that. And we believe we can control what we can control. So the marina, if we can develop the marina and some other aspects that I'll show you, development, business, residents, and interest is going to come, and it's inevitable. We are ripe for that. So of course, currently we've been under the process of completing our new bulkhead. We've raised it 3 feet to take into account for some of the water, the rising water levels and so forth. And it's going to be a beautiful pathway. It's going to be done at the end of October, early November, and I invite you down there, and you're going to get to see a little bit of glimpse of the future. The other thing about that area is it's common area where people want to gather. Every town needs a gathering point. I was just talking, Mayor Aragon was talking about some of her gathering points. The marina's ours, and so it's a great opportunity. But I'm not going to talk about just the marina. Not just yet. One of the things we wanted to do was we added a passenger ferry, and can I see a showing of hands who've heard about our passenger ferry? Okay, pretty much everybody. And I can't tell you, yes, we did a beta test, and it still has a couple more weeks, and if you can actually get a reservation, go for it because it's incredible. It's a hydrofoil boat, it travels over 30 knots, and it kicks everybody else's butt on the Sound. Brings you into Bell Harbor, great location to visit Seattle and go up to the market and come back. I've rode it a few times, and I can tell you just the atmosphere and the attitude of everybody riding it has been, you know, just mind-blowingly good. But what it did, not only providing a service for our community, it brought tourism into our community, which is showing us the potential. I was just talking to one of the business owners just a little bit ago. She runs the Teacup down there. Her business has increased. In fact, in September, I think in 10 days, you made the month that you had made in previous years. So this just shows you the potential of what we can do with this. And we're looking to expand it and perfect it and so forth. And this beta test is going to help us get it. The other thing it did is you talk about PR for a city, right? Nothing's more pleasing to a mayor is he's watching the news while he's working, and it's the air traffic helicopter, and they're going, hey, there's the Des Moines ferry kicking butt across the Sound, right? So as a mayor, you're like, yes, we love this. Thank you. And what it's done is really started to generate a lot of development interest in our town. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here. So a couple things here with our town is we have the business park. It has it created about 4,000 jobs, and this was in partnership with the port. Thank you, Ryan, for all your partnership and so forth. And I gotta say thank you to a couple former mayors who helped really drive this. Former Mayor Dave Kaplan was big on it, and former Mayor Matt Peen as well. But we're gonna do this new Des Moines West part, and that's gonna add another 600 jobs. Thank you. And then also across the street, we just had a group called Riot Games. So they do League of Legends and all these things. Believe it or not, they have events that are bigger than the Super Bowl. And they have these buildings located strategically. They have one in Ireland, one here, and then they're putting another one in Asia so they can follow the sun. And they do amazing things where their live streaming and gaming is huge. So all of these kind of exciting new things coming to our town. Of course, we got the Kent Des Moines Station, but I also add, we have Angle Lake, thanks to SeaTac. And this one, of course, is right across the border from Highline College. Mr. Gertzman's here, and got to give you guys a shout out for that. It's going to be a great partnership. And then, of course, on Star Lake. So they're not necessarily in our city, but they're all surrounding about us. So it gives that mobility. So we've got ferry mobility, we've got different options, we've got light rail, and of course we're working on we've had some bus service that we've added to get you to the light rail from our downtown. And of course we've been expanding parks. Up in Midway we bought thanks to King County, thanks Mr. Up the Grove, Dave, for helping us with some grant money. So we were able to procure property. One of the things did is we have a lot of BIPOC community up there. It's expanded the park, it's improved sight lines, and it's made a great place to play for the kids. I was just up there the other night. They were having a fantastic time. We also we had the Van Gaskin House, and unfortunately, well, it was really kind of fortunately, in our efforts to put a sprinkler system in, we discovered Native American artifacts or indigenous peoples artifacts. So we worked with the tribes and we created Soundview Park. And so we've been opening up space, and this has one of the best views in the city. If you have not been to this park, you need to come. And in that, and we'll talk about a few things here, in that part of it, we added some story stones, and we're adding a form of a pole, a story pole, and stuff like that to recognize their presence in our city and where they and their presence years ago, obviously. But it's a nice thing, and it's been a great partnership with the tribes. All 5 of them worked with us. We have an effective law enforcement. I heard Mayor Aragon talking about it. We took some of the ARPA money, we added a few officers, and we also have co-responders too. We call it GPS. It's called Getting People Services. And so some of our homeless or misfortunate or drug addicted don't typically like to talk to officers. So we have another option, and we have a system to plug them into services. So that's worked really well. Also, we have SR3. I saw Casey around here somewhere, if she'll raise her hand. This is a great organization, and it could be big for us in tourism. We plan to incorporate them in our adaptive purpose building, and I believe we could get thousands of visitors into our community just to see that organization. These are the guys that babysit and take care of baby seals that have been abandoned. Say somebody's at a park and they let their dog loose and it chases the mother off. Well, unfortunately, that seal would be sentenced to death. These guys give them a fighting chance. They go find them, they care for them, they heal them, and they release them back to where they're found. So this is great. And if you've ever gone and taken a tour, you see these baby seals, you melt. As you can see, the park expansion, now that park that I'm talking about, Soundview Park, that's an impromptu yoga session. So these are some great things that are happening in our community. People are enjoying it. One of the things I want to say, and I want to go back, is our city 8-9 years ago, we were almost bankrupt. The council before us made hard decisions. We did furloughs, restructuring, we hired a new city manager, and now we're solvent. We have a reserve, and we have a great credit rating. So a lot of the stuff we're going to do is at less money, and we like to find other people's money, use government to pay for things, and not put it on our taxpayers. So really quick, I already talked about those kind of things. We also are going to do improvements in Redondo. We're putting in almost $10 million over the next 3 years in replacing the fishing pier, moving the restrooms, improving the flow and continuity and parking and so forth. So that's going to be great. So we're working across all our town. One thing I'll talk about the light rail is that's going to add quality affordable housing up on the Pack Highway as well. And I'm excited about that too, because it's really going to change that portion of our community. And with that, I ask you and invite you to be part of our great journey forward. I think we've got a lot to offer, and Des Moines is open for business, and come on in and do it with us. Thank you.
Okay, it's now my privilege to introduce our next mayor of the evening, Mayor Sue Ann Hohimer from the city of Normandy Park.
Thank you so much, Annie and the Chamber, for having this lovely gathering. And I agree with others. It's so nice to see everyone in person again. I'm just enjoying being in the same room with you all. So up against all these other mayors here, we're the little guy. We are the tiny little city of Normandy Park. And probably some of that kind of hometown, small town feel will come as I just kind of share some Normandy Park by the numbers with you tonight, and hopefully just let you in on kind of where we're at as a city right now, just by walking through some of the numbers. I thought I'd just kind of keep it simple for us. We're a simple city. Our city is now a population of 6,790 people. We do have a few new developments going in, some lovely townhomes that are coming, and we are excited about being able to expand in that way. Our city as a whole is only 2.5 square miles of land. There's about 6 miles, but a lot of that's water. And so we are small in terms of our population, and we don't really have all that much more property available for land growth. Our current median assessed value for a home is up a little bit these days. It's $755,000. And we have about 2,807 housing units. One of the things I was really proud of recently is that we had elections in August, and about 58% of our voters came out to vote, our registered voters. So that was the highest percentage in all of King County. And so we were a really engaged community. Now, a little piece of that was maybe not quite as fortunate is one of the things we were really hoping that people would vote for is for a bond in order for us to build a brand new civic center for us to have a common meeting space for the community. And 43% of the people were really excited about that and voted yes, but that wasn't quite enough to push it over the finish line. So we are kind of regrouping as a city council and really trying to figure out what the community wants and how they will most likely be excited about engaging with one another in the future in a big common area somewhere. So we're currently operating out of a school building that we purchased for a very small sum many, many years ago from the Highline School District. And so the building's in two pieces, and the first was really in bad condition, and that is down, and the second is where our current city hall is operating. So that's kind of one of the big things that we're looking forward to in our immediate future, is just figuring out kind of where we go from here. And I think in a lot of ways it presents us with a lovely opportunity, because coming out of COVID, I think it's been challenging for people. One of the things that makes our community so strong is that we're really community oriented. We know our neighbors. We know, everyone up and down the street. When I was raising my 4 sons in our first house in Normandy Park, which we always say nobody leaves Normandy Park, they just trade houses, which kind of does seem to happen. We just sort of have people moving up and out and downsizing and upsizing. But there were, 28 kids under the age of 18 just living on one cul-de-sac. And so it's any morning you might not even know who's in the kitchen getting another bowl of cereal. Like, how many kids are in here? But it's that kind of community where people look after one another. And whether it's apartments or condos or houses in between, I feel like one of the real strengths is that our community intentionally makes sure that we know one another and that we care for one another. So during COVID, while we did that and looked after our immediate neighbors, I do think that there were many ways in which our community kind of suffered from not having these big, robust gatherings. And so I think going forward, as we meet together again and really kind of get around things that we're interested in groups, I think some new ideas will develop, and I'm optimistic about where we're headed in terms of what we're going to be able to build together next as a community. Some other numbers that I wanted to share with you is that just 2.5% of our land is zoned for commercial. So like the other lovely mayors here, we are open for business in Normandy Park, and we're excited about the future businesses that we will be able to host in Normandy Park. And most of those businesses take place just right on First Avenue. We have 6 main entry points off of First Avenue into kind of the inner workings of our city. And so right along First Avenue, we have 2 main business centers, and they're always busy and bustling, but there's room for more, and we're looking forward to having some new businesses in Normandy Park. Let me get to some other items here. We have 932 jobs in Normandy Park of employees that are currently working in our city. 79.6% of our residents come with some college degree or higher, and I feel like that really shows in our passion for education overall and just lifelong learning, whether it's our preschool or groups of pickleball players that are seniors. There's really a desire to want to instruct and mentor and help one another. I love that we have grandparents in our community that are kind of adopted, but kids have gone all the way through school with their buddies at school, just assuming that these grandparents who show up to everything are their biological grandparents, but they're just the neighbors who just love them and come to all of their activities. And I think you see that throughout our community. And really that is what makes us such a strong community. The median household income is up a bit. It's $102,212 right now. And I think what we've seen during COVID is a lot of people moved in from other surrounding Seattle locations. And so we have a lot more kind of double income workers who are working from home. And so again, I just invite any businesses out there that have some ideas for how people might want to enjoy spending their money in midday, or some of those things where people can maybe meet with others around work, but have a place to go that's not necessarily their home. We also have a market area. So in addition to just our population, we've had several studies done that show we have a market area of about 35,000, close to 36,000 people that are in and out of our community during the day. So it's a lot of customers. And so we're just encouraging any of you innovative people out there to be thinking about the kind of business that you would want to bring to Normandy Park. So just really quickly, I'm going to run through just some 1 through 10 numbers. We have one elementary school in Normandy Park, but we love our kids. And so any businesses that cater to activities for kids would be really welcome. We have 2 hardware stores, 3 private clubs, 4 churches. That's where a lot of our diversity in our neighborhood really makes itself known, in a lot of our church activities and in our working in and amongst one another in our churches. We have a Samoan population, Filipino, Black American, people that are in grief and come together to help each other out, people in recovery. And I think it's really remarkable how our city really embraces lots of different opportunities there to work with one another around areas of either interest or challenge or culture or something special to celebrate. Our city has 5 annual events a year that we're really proud of. We do a Winterfest, an Arbor Day celebration. Our 4th of July parade is huge. We have a fall event that usually involves kind of an art show, and we do a National Night Out celebration. We would just love to have any other restaurants in our community. We have lots of people that just enjoy Normandy Park and are loyal, so loyal. I don't think we lost any big businesses over COVID because our people take good care of their businesses. So I'm just really hoping that any of you out there listening will consider bringing your business to Normandy Park. It's a great city with lovely people, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mayor Hohimer. It's now my honor to introduce our next speaker, Mayor Jake Simpson from the city of SeaTac.
Well, it's really nice to be able to get back together. Again, I wanted to thank the Chamber for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak about the city that I love. As we emerge from the pandemic, I think all cities are resetting our priorities. One thing we noticed in SeaTac was the accumulation of litter on our sidewalks and streets during the pandemic. I'm going to remember to do my slideshow here. There we go. So we as a city took several steps to address the issue. We secured a state grant to pay for weekly cleanups along our freeway exits and entrances. Our Public Works Department launched an Adopt a Street program to connect our community to the cleanup effort, and we went big on the cleanup front. I was able to help kick off the inaugural Great SeaTac Scrub Down event at Angle Lake Park. For one day, dozens of volunteers spread across the city to clean their own community. During the event, roughly 65 bags of trash were picked up and nearly 1,000 pounds of garbage. Speaking of keeping SeaTac clean, the city initiated an electrification study. This study will assess electric vehicle needs for the city, as well as create a roadmap to facilitate converting its current and future fleet to electric vehicles. Electrification of the city's vehicle fleet will benefit the city not only from an environmental perspective, but it will also reduce overall fleet maintenance and operating costs. And SeaTac is adding hundreds of new housing units. This year, the Inland Group will open 585 brand new affordable housing units at South 154th Street and International Boulevard. About a dozen new businesses will open on the ground floor of that development, including 3 restaurants, a market, a deli, a bubble tea shop, a coffee shop, a childcare facility, a barber shop, an electronics repair and sales store, a chiropractor office, and a neighborhood police office. So that building's got a lot going on. Some of the businesses are returning to SeaTac since they had moved due to redevelopment of this property. This project demonstrates SeaTac's support for transit-oriented development and more housing. And to fulfill that need, we have 3 major apartment complexes permitted, including the Time Apartments with 289 units, the Amelia Apartments with 107 units, and the SeaTac Hotel and Apartments with 182 units. Along the light rail line, Sound Transit is expanding to Federal Way, and as we have heard, there's a delay until 2025, but we look forward to the opening of the extension. Keeping our residents and visitors safe continues to be a priority in the city of SeaTac. The SeaTac Police hosted a virtual hotel-motel meeting to help local businesses with crime prevention and eradicating human trafficking. Protecting people from being trafficked is a top priority of the city. Last year, with the help from Senator Karen Kaiser and Rep. Tina Orwell, the city of SeaTac successfully championed a $140,000 state budget provision to combat human trafficking. The police continue to focus on this issue with operations designed to rescue people involved in human trafficking and arresting those that are committing these heinous crimes. The city also relaunched the Block Watch program and National Night Out after a slight COVID pause. 2 other important programs, the Teen and Community Police Academies, are back up and running, and those are helping connect our residents with our police force. One thing we relearned over the past 2 years is how important it is to get outside and enjoy nature. Our Parks Department has acquired 8 acres of land from WSDOT to expand the existing Des Moines Creek Park. And I was fortunate enough to be invited to the kickoff of the grand opening of the world-class SeaTac BMX Park in North SeaTac Park. City and staff and volunteers partnered with Forterra and Partners in Employment to restore 3.5 acres of urban forest inside of North SeaTac Park and maintaining a ½ acre at Angle Lake Trail. The volunteers removed invasive species, built habitat piles, and spread mulch that will take care of recently planted trees. Some of those volunteers included Councilmember Peter Kwan, port commissioners, myself, my family, other city council members. My daughter insists that we have to go back often because she said it was one of the most fun events that she's ever been to. She's 6 and she just loved cleaning up the invasive ivy. It's an interesting hobby for a 6-year-old, but you know. The city council also passed the Arts and Culture Master Plan, which guides the work of staff and volunteers to enhance arts and culture throughout the city. The goal of the plan is to bring all kinds of people together to create more art, culture, and visibility for SeaTac. The city also created a special events coordinator position who had put together several large public events, including the most recent Touch a Truck event. This picture is from our Touch a Truck event, where more than 500 people gathered at Valley Ridge Park to meet with hardworking government employees to find out how they serve our residents every day. There we go. Success has continued in our economic development efforts. The city created the SeaTac Specific Tourism Destination Development Plan, which is a long-term strategic tourism and travel plan that will improve the city's ability to attract visitors, conventioneers, and new businesses to the market. Our economic team conducted a business synergy outreach to contact 500 businesses in SeaTac to provide resources and improve communications between the city and local merchants. Our economic development department worked on ARPA funding allocation for small business support programs. And the city supported the opening of 2 multi-tenant international malls, the Mall of Africa and the SeaTac International Mall, representing 50+ businesses in the south part of our city along International Boulevard. The city also reinstated the SeaTac Hotel's shopping and dining shuttle program to support the local hospitality industry. In SeaTac, small businesses are the lifeblood of our city. The Small Business Association says 99.9% of all U.S. businesses are small businesses, and I wanted to showcase one such business. A good friend of mine from high school, Avina Love, owns Love's Buds and Blooms on International Boulevard, and I went and made this video for her.
loves Buds and Blooms, and I've been an owner for a little over 2 years now. International Boulevard in SeaTac, right next to the airport on cemetery grounds. This is Velvet, and this is, what's your name? Chevy. Chevy, just like the car. Being with my babies, having that freedom to bring them with me. And then I would say getting to do the funeral work for people is pretty honorable work for me. We get to do all the funeral work for Bonnie Watson and honor loved ones on their way out, huh? Yep. So I would say that's the most rewarding part. Babies and funeral work. I would say like a focus on helping the general public with homelessness and drug addiction, honestly, is would be helpful to small business. I take a lot of pride in my work. I treat everybody like family in here. While I'm dealing with their loss and grief, I try to make sure that I'm making the best possible thing that I can for them. And in turn, I get a lot of love back. So it's a nice community family feel in here. My repeat customers are people who, their families are buried here. So as I'm seeing people over and over, I'm listening to the stories of how they lost their dad and then their son and then their brother and then their wife. Like, that is my whole business. So it's important for me to keep good relationships with everybody and treat them well, treat them like family. I want them to leave here, even though they're grieving, confident in giving me their business and that I will do an honorable job for them. It's not as glamorous as people think. I think people always think that florists are frolicking through fields in summer dresses, just picking wildflowers, and it's such a small part of it, the design work. It's really muddy and dirty and wet and labor intensive, and I think that's kind of the funniest part is people think that you walk into a flower shop and you just get to play with flowers all day, but it's a lot more work, physical work than that. And people just don't see it, what it takes to actually make these things beautiful and get them where they're going. It's a process. And people just don't realize. Huh? People don't know how hard we work, huh? No.
Almost 4.
When's your birthday?
Soon. What do we look for to know that your birthday's coming?
Red leaves and pumpkins.
Yep, red leaves and pumpkins means it's almost Chevy's birthday. Yeah.
Well, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know it's going to be hard to follow Chevy, but I think our next guest can do that. Please welcome the Mayor of Tukwila, Mayor Allan Ekberg.
Thank you, Allan Ekberg, Mayor Tukwila. It will be a hard act to follow. I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's going on in the city of Tukwila. Yeah, there's the ugly right there. Oops, I'm closing it on myself. I don't want to do that. The bad part, we're looking at a revenue stream right now that's kind of hurting. Way back to 2015, we're pretty much there to 2014. So we're kind of working to overcome that. Council's doing a great job with the administration to figure this thing out. If we look at this one, that's our dip down in the COVID timeframe, and we're not coming back up to where we expected to be. Those things being said, we're working on a three-legged stool approach. One of those approaches is how do we look at our revenue opportunities? What do we do about our existing services and expenditures? And then what do we have in the bankroll that can help us carry us through for the next couple of years?
So those are the type of things that we're working on currently. If we look at our law enforcement and our police department, we are working on property crime issues. I think we're all facing that in our regions. We all know that. So we're talking with the state legislators about some changes that might be beneficial to not only the city of Tukwila, but the South End cities, as well as the state of Washington. We're looking at hiring some additional police officers, filling some positions that have remained vacant during the COVID timeframe. And we're also looking at the opportunity to bring new employees into the city, into our new Justice Center, which opened up recently. Also, in our fire services, we're working on a contract with Puget Sound Regional Fire Services in order to be a future provider of fire services to the city of Tukwila to benefit the region as well as the city itself. In that role, our city council will be deliberating on that vote next week. And we see here a picture of a new fire station that the public safety plan was initiated by a vote of the public, and we have 2 new fire stations and the new Justice Center to support that. Economically, retails are tracking a little bit higher than what we expected, but not as high as we expected to have. So when you look at the crossover between revenues and expenditures, we're getting real close to that and going to exceed that in another couple of years if we don't do something now about that. That being said, lodging tax revenue is looking a lot better than we expected, although it's going to continue to grow as more people come into our environment, into our region, to spend money in Burien and Des Moines, Normandy Park, and SeaTac, along with Tukwila. Economic recovery is important. As you can see, we're coming back up to where we were a couple years back, and so we expect that growth to continue even more. So the interesting thing about what we're doing in some of our economic development spaces, what we've been doing with small businesses, and I really want to recognize the port, and we'll be hearing from them shortly. Last year, the port was instrumental in a Business Impact Northwest process to help small businesses improve their digital marketing campaigns. And the port has also led funding opportunities and created a new community business connectors program. So hats off to the port, and we thank you for those services. Not only with the port, but Highline and other partner cities have worked on contributing to small business development center opportunities that Highline is supporting for the local community. So we thank Highline College for that. And in Tukwila, we have what's called Experience Tukwila. It's an opportunity for a social media platform to learn about what's going on in Tukwila. Future developments, we're looking at what's called the Pros, which is a apartment complex in the heart of South Center. Currently, we have a large apartment complex. We have 2 senior housing complexes. This will be a 3rd market rate complex for people to live in the heart of Tukwila next to South Center Mall. Wadajir is a project that Forterra is proposing, which will be up on Tukwila International Boulevard. And the goal with that is to have 100 residential units, which will be owner-occupied units, and it'd be like a cooperative process for them. And in the base ground floor, they're looking at a lot of small different businesses coming into that location as well. Health and Wellness Center, we have an organization called Health Point in the city of Tukwila. They're off of Military Road. We're looking at them to move on to land that the city has sold to them on Tukwila International Boulevard, which will be closer to the residential neighborhoods that they support. And then the Prado District. If you all go south of South Center, there's a lot of open space down there, 240 some odd acres. And the Prado District's been identified by the Sugali family as a future development site for commercial and residential support. If we look at housing in the city of Tukwila, our numbers have been growing quite well. Economic development, we have a lot of different opportunities. This is the website to go out to learn about those opportunities. This one company being shown here, Stella, is all about building satellites for space in our city. It's pretty cool. When we think about rugby as a sport, we have a complex called Starfire. And right now we're gonna tell Glendale, Colorado, who thinks they're the biggest rugby city in the world, that we're gonna be the ones coming up after you guys. And the reason for that is we have the Seawolves. They're a Major League Rugby finals. They won 2 world champions, and they've played a 3rd world champion, and they lost to New York just recently. Rugby Sevens is mentioned up there. Last summer, Tukwila hosted the U.S. National Rugby Sevens Championships at Starfire Sports. And in 2031, the Men's World Cup is coming to the local Seattle area. We expect the Starfire's facility to be a training facility for them, as well as the 2033 World Cup. Next on is Experience Tukwila. This is a platform where you can learn about business opportunities in the city of Tukwila. Those are the links to it. So you can have access to multiple different things: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Hi, I'm Eric Duchel, professional rugby player and big fan of the community that surrounds my team, the Seawolves. Join me as I explore and experience Tukwila.
People always ask me, Eric, how do you become an elite athlete? And I always tell them, eat your meat and potatoes, stay humble, and get to Starfire. It's this multi-sport complex out in Tukwila where the Seattle Sounders train, little kids come train, and more importantly, the Seattle Seawolves train and play. How many people, players, teams come through Starfire?
Ooh, a lot. You know the bridge that you drove over coming in here?
Yeah.
We have about 1.3 million people come across that bridge every year.
Wow, that's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, our mission is to create this world-class facility that's for everyone, that's inclusive for our communities. It doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can come and play at Starfire.
It became like a home for me. Soccer was my outlet. It was a place that I felt my best self.
It's like an atmosphere. It's like I'm ready to play a big game. It's a big complex with lots of fields.
I don't think anything can compare to Starfire. I've been to other soccer facilities, but they've just never felt like this.
We play rugby games here, lacrosse, Quidditch, ultimate frisbee.
Big rivalries happen here, championship games happen here in the stadium.
It's electric. There's so many fans, it's always sold out. I agree.
So if we were gonna play a little soccer, do you think you can score on me?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, I'd drill it at you. I'd go right in the corner.
I think I definitely.
I think I still got it, so I think I'll definitely be able to score, so you better watch out.
But I'm not taking a rugby tackle from you though.
Awesome.
So that's what we have going on in Tukwila. Thank you for your support.
All right, thank you, Mayor Ekberg. And for our last esteemed speaker of the evening, please welcome Port Commission President Ryan Calkins from the Port of Seattle.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you to the sponsors as well. I also just want to have us all give a round of applause to the workers who are serving us dinner tonight. They are making this extraordinary event. And then because you guys have patiently listened to a lot of information, I'm going to ask you all to stand up. We're going to go through a little exercise here. It's about the port, so it's a little self-centered on my part, but stand if you're able. Feel like a preacher right now. And I'm going to ask you to take a seat if, in the last year, have you taken a cruise to Alaska? Anybody taken a cruise to Alaska? Well, you should, but okay. Next, I'm going to ask you to sit if you've eaten wild-caught salmon. Okay, I figured that would cover quite a few folks. All right, if you're still standing, please sit if you have taken a flight from SEA, from SeaTac International Airport.
Oh, they take it now.
And finally, if anybody is still standing at this point, if you've ordered anything online, you can be seated. And my point in all of this is that if you've done any of those things, you have relied on the Port of Seattle to make that happen. We are an institution, and likely for many of you, that's monthly, weekly, or even daily. If you're like our household with Amazon, you're constantly ordering stuff online. But we are an institution that we all rely on all the time, and we are continuing to try to do that as a people-centered institution. So I'm going to try to run through, they gave me a half an hour. I'm going to try to make it in 29 minutes so we can get through this. I'm kidding, guys. They gave me the same time they gave the mayors. So there's just a lot of information, and I think it's all really important. So the Port of Seattle is, our North Star are these 6 goals here. We call them our Century Agenda goals. We updated them a couple of years ago, but you can see that they cover all the things that you would expect out of a port, as well as some things that hopefully you'd be surprised to see too, that we are really striving to be the greenest and most energy efficient port in North America. And we want to be a model for equity, diversity, and inclusion. One of my favorite additions recently was our executive director really emphasized this need to be a highly effective public agency, kind of a hybrid where we have these business lines that I'll talk about next that operate like businesses, but we're also a public agency that relies on some tax levy money to do some things that wouldn't otherwise happen in the market. So as a reminder of what we do, and in this room, I don't think it's any surprise, we run Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Sometimes that's the first thing a port commissioner has to do is remind people that we run SEA. But along with that, when people think of the port, they certainly think of the maritime cargo aspect of that. We do a part of that in conjunction with the Port of Tacoma, the big container terminals. We run as a group called the Northwest Seaport Alliance. Of course, we also have commercial fishing and moorage, the recreational boating facilities like Shill Shoal. And finally, our fourth line of business is real estate and cruise. And we do own a lot of land in King County. You can see that our economic impact is pretty big. I think the most important for me is those 121,200 jobs. Port jobs are great jobs. They're jobs like longshore workers, baggage handlers, airline pilots, commercial fishermen, naval architects. And as you can see, we also cover quite a bit of land. That green on the left, that's Shill Shoal Marina. The big green on the right is the airport. Lots of property in between. I'm going to try to cover three things tonight: bouncing back from the pandemic, what it means to be a green port, and some of the upgrades and changes to SEA. So one of the things we did during the pandemic was run a series of listening sessions, and I imagine some of you in this room were a part of those listening sessions. It was prompted by Commissioner Sam Cho, and it turned out to be an extraordinary exercise in learning how do we craft a budget, how do we use the kind of relief funds that we got from the federal government to make the greatest impact on our communities. And you'll see it was a rough time for us. You can see 9/11, there was a little dip, Great Recession, there's a little dip, and these are passengers at the airport. Look at that dip. And keep in mind that of those 20 million passengers in 2020, about 10 million of them happened before the pandemic. So in those 3 months, January, February, March, we had about 10 million passengers, 10 million the remaining 9 months of the year. So it was an extraordinary drop for us. You can see that for 2022, we're bouncing right back. It is not the same mix of passengers that we had before the pandemic, but if anybody wants to ask me about that, that's a whole hour's worth of discussion as well. For now, we are really excited to note that we are truly restoring operations at the airport, at cruise, in our air cargo and maritime cargo. You can see in just our cruise season, that 296 ship calls, that's about a 25% increase over 2019 pre-pandemic. We had many, many more ship calls this year, in part because we were open for business and other places were not. For us, I think top line, it's important to remember just how big an impact we have in the region. And I want you to look at that bottom number, that $4.4 billion in capital improvement plan over the next 5 years. That means lots of skilled tradespeople working. That means lots of folks who are supplying the steel for our projects or who are working to develop the workforce that we need to carry all that out. That is an enormous investment in our community. I also want to call out somebody who should have gotten a call out earlier, and that's Aaron Garcia, who is here tonight. He is a member of the Highlands School Board. And the reason I mention him here is because it is honestly the hardest job in politics, what he does as a school board director. And we've had the opportunity to work with Highland Public Schools to develop Maritime High School as part of that workforce and community related programs and lots of other things, because the port has recognized for the last few years that workforce development is actually central to our mission. And I think we've all heard the news reports about how hard it is right now to find good workforce for our institutions. We've got 2,200 employees at the port. We're closely following our airline and seaport partners. It's tough right now. And although they say, when's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? The second best time is right now. We're investing now in workforce development so that things like that crunch on the waterfront and at the airport don't persist. In terms of our green initiatives, I am truly proud of the leadership that the Port of Seattle has made. And around here, it's sort of run of the mill. We're all really focused on sustainability, but when you compare us to peer ports around the country and around the world, we are head and shoulders above where other ports are headed, both on the seaport and the airport side of things. lots to talk about in terms of exciting things that we're doing. I think some of the greatest impact for the next generation will be the introduction of sustainable aviation fuels and the use of hydrogen in our green economy. And the Port of Seattle is going to be a conduit for those things. Not only are we creating a market for it, but we're pushing our partners to take an aggressive stand. And Alaska, our sponsor tonight, is honestly, quite honestly, the lead airline globally in terms of pursuing sustainable aviation fuels and other zero emissions flights. One of my proudest achievements over the last year is this initiation of a green corridor from here up to Alaska. That's our cruise corridor. You can see in that logo map there the partners that we've gotten to join us as first movers. Our goal is zero emissions cruise from here to Alaska. We're the largest and fastest growing cruise market on the West Coast, and we want to be able to keep that position and do it sustainably. So we're moving fast on that. One thing I want, there's sort of a door prize in my speech, and that is I need you to pull out your phone right now, which is normally kind of weird to pull out your phone during a speaker, but over on the right-hand side, that SEA app, that I'm giving you a gift by having you download that onto your phone right now. If you don't already have, does anybody in the room have it besides me and the port employees? Excellent. Okay, so if you have it, you know that is like a free pass to a bunch of cool stuff at the airport. And I know we were in the news recently because the lines got really long because everybody wanted to travel. On there is one of the things that you can find is the Spot Saver, that second little logo there. That is an opportunity. When you check in for your flight 24 hours in advance, you can then check in for Spot Saver, which gives you a time in the queue when you show up and there's no line. You just walk right up to the front of the queue and you go in because you have your appointment then. So download the app. Next time you travel, use Spot Saver to get through, okay? You're welcome. Price of admission right there. At the airport, we have lots of exciting new things, including dining and retail options. The port employees and the airport employees love Wendy's the most because they love to have their Frosty. You've probably heard some news about our new concourse, the new North Satellite Concourse, the International Arrivals Facility, a couple of billion-dollar projects that recently we cut the tape on, and the cell phone lot improvements, which are great for all of us who need to pick up loved ones at the airport. And finally, if you're parking at the airport, you can now use our automated guidance system to find a spot. I'm going to blow right through this time. No, so lots more to come in our capital improvement plan. I hope you all get a chance to travel through SEA soon. The big, great, exciting news is that this last year we were voted North America's #1 airport in a customer satisfaction survey. So the first time. And with that, I'm going to wrap up so we can jump to the panel.
Thank you. And thank you all again so much for being here tonight. Those were excellent presentations, and I think that we learned a lot about our cities and our port. And we do have some time for Q&A from the audience. So if you would like to ask a question of our panel tonight, you can text the number on the screen. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. And to help me facilitate the Q&A, I'm going to invite our Executive Vice President, Samantha Lee, to come up and join me. I know you all know and love Sammy, so let's give her a hand.
Sammy.
Thank you, Sammy. So this is for the whole panel. If you could snap your fingers and fix one thing about your city or the port today, what would that be? And we'll start down with Mayor Aragon.
What I would love if I snap my fingers is infrastructure would just sort of modernize itself instantly. Or even make infrastructure actually attractive thing to hear from voters, because it's so essential to our ability to grow and to provide the housing. Because we just have the growth in our region. So if I could snap my fingers and have modern roads, sidewalks whenever anyone asks for them, that would be it.
I don't know how to top that.
What she said.
Yeah, what she said. Yeah, it would be the same. It's obviously for us, the marina is one of our major things. That's what it starts there. That was done, I think we'd be seeing a miraculous pace of success in our city.
Similar, I mean, all that infrastructure stuff would be incredible. And for us uniquely, it would be a civic center. If we could just poof, have that happen, I think we'd make excellent use of it.
I think for me, it would be making sure that the folks in our community understand how to access the council and how to access resources that the city is able to provide for them. And that we would be able to convey what we're working on as a city in a more efficient way.
And for me, it comes to mind is middle housing to try to get people housed.
We're effectively a transportation agency. We move people and goods, and right now we are on the cusp of the same kind of transformation that happened 100 years ago from steam to the internal combustion engine. We're going from internal combustion to electric everything. And for an institution like ours, we got to figure out how to manage all those electric vehicles, whether it's light trucks and cars or locomotives or ships. And that's a lot of investment in new infrastructure. I'm excited for what that will mean, but it's also a little bit intimidating to think about. We're going to be undertaking a wholesale revamping of our infrastructure.
Beautiful. Sorry, I'm going to lean in a little bit. So we understand that it takes a tremendous amount of dedication and sacrifice to be a public servant. Was there a particular person or event that inspired you to run for office? We'll start with you, Commission President Calkins.
Eleanor Roosevelt, actually. I didn't know her, but after college, I lived in Latin America for 4 years, and I was working in human rights, and she really shaped our understanding of human rights, and she did so primarily after FDR died, and she took that platform and turned it into a global understanding of the very basics of what everyone deserves, and so I think of her as a personal hero.
For myself, it was issue with King County wanting to rezone a single-family neighborhood into light industry and commercial, and it was unincorporated. We fought that, we won that, and then we worked to annex our neighborhood into the city of Tukwila, and overnight we almost doubled the population of Tukwila through 3 annexations at once. And then someone said, "Why don't you run for office?" And maybe that glass of wine got to me. I said, "Yeah, I can do that. I'm 29 years old. I can do anything." Ran for office, got elected in 1990, stayed there through 97. And in 1995, we modified the comp plan to ensure that residential neighborhoods would remain neighborhoods.
For me, it was doing organizing in SeaTac with a lot of the members, particularly in the East African community, whose living conditions, when I would go to their homes and visit, were really difficult to see and be in. And I was always welcomed into the homes. There was always room at the table for a meal, but also saw a lot of issues with 10 people having to live in one place because of lack of affordability and mold growing under carpets and things like that, and was asked to run and decided to.
For me, I think it was probably my father. I'm very inspired by his interest in just being involved in community and people. And I lived for most of my childhood in right downtown inner city Chicago. And I just watched all the things that could happen when you're willing to get involved. So he's really involved just in our little ward with the aldermen, and to take such a huge city of Chicago and watch individual people be able to make a really big difference just by getting involved really locally was very inspiring to me. And it's one of the things I love now about being the mayor of such a small town is it's small enough that we really get an opportunity to know everyone and can really work with people just one-on-one in whatever their unique situation is. So that's it.
I'm not going to be as poetic. That guy right there, Dave Kaplan, thought I had potential, and he called me and he goes, "How'd you like to be stupid for about 4 or 8 years?" But no, seriously, he recognized I love to serve my community, and he was a great influencer in that. So thank you, Dave.
So when I was a registered nurse in a community health clinic in South Seattle, our management actually had us all gather for 4 hours every Wednesday to talk about new policies that were passed. And healthcare is one of the most regulated industries out there. And one day I heard something happened in Olympia, and our very successful clinic was turned upside down. Our patients didn't have the insurance they needed, and I just was like, why would somebody do that to a very successful operation like ours? So that's when I decided that, well, maybe if there were more people in healthcare influencing these policies, then that wouldn't happen. So I think that was the beginning of a lesson in terms of representation matters on legislative councils, whether it's the city, the state, or federal. And if you feel like people are there that don't represent your interests, then you need to think about being that representation.
Great, thank you. I'm going to direct this question to Mayor Ekberg because you did allude to this in one of your slides, but the Washington State Legislature will convene in Olympia in January for a long session. Are there any policy areas that you're looking to the state for partnership and local support?
Yes, as we know, there's several districts in the state of Washington. I'm a representative for one of the districts on an Association Washington City Committee dealing with middle housing, and we're working on looking at what sort of policies could we push towards the state legislature to consider passage for.
And anybody else who would like to add to that?
I'm active on the AWC Legislative Committee as well, and I was really happy that I got support to get support for cities for those mental health providers that all of the cities that I work with are really trying to have that access to people who need it and to connect it to the law enforcement that we have as well. And I think what's interesting to me being in workforce and my day job is that I've been through hours and hours of trying to troubleshoot about how do you produce that workforce. And I'm kind of surprised that the workforce isn't landing in the seats where we need them in the city. So I was surprised to learn and happy to learn that a lot of our partner cities had the same issue and that behavioral health actually floated to one of the 5 priorities of the AWC.
I would also just add on to that exactly what Mayor Sofia Aragon said, but also one of the things we're really proud of in Normandy Park is having our own police department, and our 10 officers are amazing and work really hard for our city, and I know they would just really appreciate some clarity in legislation from our state government about some of the more recent laws that have kind of created some confusion around policing. So we're excited to see our legislators work on clearing some of that stuff up. Thanks.
Thank you. And then we want to take a couple questions from the audience. Does anyone want to ask their question out loud? Raise your hand. No? Oh, okay. I'll bring you the mic. Hold on.
He talks loud anyway.
Yeah. Project. Projects.
All right, this is a low-hanging fruit question for Commissioner Calkins. Put him on this one now. This is very easy. I love the SEA app. I use it all the time, and I love the airport's water bottle filling stations. Yes.
Uptake.
But the one thing that's missing is on your map, where to find the water bottle filling stations is not on the map. Can you make that happen?
You aren't the first person to mention that. I've had another person say that as well. They sell water bottles for a living, so I think they're a little bit self-interested. But I'm going to kick that to Claire and say we will work on it for sure.
Annie, do we have any?
We do. We've got a couple more.
I'm going to have a little fun with you guys. Of the mayors and board official on the dais right now, which one do you admire the most and for what reason? Meaning their city or their jurisdiction, not themselves. We like them all.
So you mean which of us up here do we admire? Oh, okay. Well, we love Des Moines Marina.
A lot of people do, but you can't have your hands on it, man.
Mayor Matt's presentation was the one I wanted to have. You know, my favorite views of the water.
I'm going to say Mayor Ekberg. He and I have got to know each other through a mutual friend, and it's been interesting. I've learned a lot from him.
I couldn't name one of these people up here. I think that they're all doing great work because they're doing their best to do the right thing in their cities. And
I'm worried that it's a popularity contest. This is, what about their city or their presentation did you admire the most?
Ryan killed his presentation. It was awesome. Yeah, that was cool. The good little stand-up thing and the app download. I downloaded the app. That was good work. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
One thing before you go is council member Up the Grove said, "Oh look, Jake's pulling out the baby, the young kids and the baby," and I said, "Yeah, I should have brought a baby seal."
That's awesome.
Thank you very much, everyone. My question is, what are ways that we can strengthen our relationships with the local school districts so that we're providing economic opportunities for our graduates?
I'm going to jump in on that one. And, I think the work that we've gotten to do on Maritime High School is emblematic of this. I think, my own personal read on the last, let's say, half century of education policy has been this move toward sort of creating a silo for education. And there were good reasons for doing that, but a part of what that meant was we separated it from industry. And that disconnect has meant that we're educating kids in a way that may not prepare them for the jobs that they're going to be taking in the next 5 and 10 years. And at Maritime High School, we're absolutely trying to change that. It is project-based learning where they get out into the work site. It's collaborative. There's actually no grades. It's based on mastery, because I don't get a grade as a port commissioner. I mean, you can fire me, but it's really about results. What can you accomplish collectively as a team? And so, I think I don't put that on the school boards as school districts. I actually put that on industry, which I represent at those tables. And so I feel like my job is to go around, whether it's the maritime trade associations, the aviation trade associations, construction and green jobs, and say, how are you connecting from K through 12 and into post-secondary to make sure that you are influencing the educational system in a way that prepares those kids? And in particular, the focus has to be on the kids who historically have not had those opportunities. So, it's an explicit value of Maritime High School and of Highland schools to say we are reaching those kids, BIPOC youth in particular for the maritime industry, getting young women into those jobs because historically they've not been in those jobs. So I think that for me is, I'd say, it's folks representing business here, you engage with education.
Thank you, Commissioner Calkins. We have 3 more questions from the audience.
Good evening. Thank you all for your presentation. My question, each of you kind of alluded to this in your slides. As we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what are you doing as a city to ensure that your residents feel like they are included in your city? So I'd like to maybe get some best practices of what you all are doing at that level.
I'm really excited to talk about this one. One of our newest staff people is sitting out here, Angel, and we're really excited to have her on. We brought her on to be a community engagement liaison so that she actually, her job, she's going to be supervised by Kyle, I believe, but she's brand new position that Deputy Mayor Neguse and Councilmember Gobena pushed for quite a while, and alongside Kyle, helping with that process. And her job is basically going out into different communities that we feel are underserved and asking those folks what they need from their city council instead of having them, have to come to City Hall, come to the castle to talk to us, So, yeah, we're really excited to have Angel on.
I'll address it. Obviously expansion of parks and stuff like that, but I think you have to have an attitude. I think we need to celebrate our differences rather than point them out. And it's a mindset that we change where we're all in a community together. And a couple of things like this is simple. Tony Hitler's back there, and here he is a businessman, and he spends a tremendous amount of his time putting on a parade and fireworks and everywhere. And when you see these events, it doesn't matter who you are, what color you are, where you come from, everybody else, everybody's celebrating the common things and bonding together. So you got to find things like that bring the community together and build them and introduce each other. We find out that we're not that different.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney. We have, I think, 3 more questions in the audience.
I know that you said this is a question for Commissioner Calkins. I know you said you've got an hour, but could you give us maybe just 2 declarative sentences about the 2 most important takeaways regarding the changes in the composition or the demographics of the air travelers that you alluded
sure.
to?
Yeah. I mean, quickly, the mix has changed I would say, on sort of 2 spectrums. One is how much leisure versus business and how much domestic versus international. So pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, we are much, much more leisure travel. And pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, we're much more domestic in that mix of, this year, 48 million. And what that means for the airport in the short term is both of those categories represent less revenue for the airport, for our airport dining and retail tenants so domestic and leisure travelers spend less money than business and international travelers. So if that's the new normal, then we're going to adjust. However, I think that at least certainly on the domestic versus international, we're starting to see that change a little bit. And a big part of that is Asia has been the slowest market to reduce COVID restrictions. And because we are the gateway to the Pacific Rim, that's meant for us as an international hub airport. We've been slower to rebound on international travel than some of our peers that are maybe more Europe focused. So I'm not going to read too far into the tea leaves on that. I do think we're going to, over the long term, actually have more international than we had pre-pandemic. And a part of that is because our 2 big partner airlines, Alaska and Delta, have made big bets on international. Delta has stated Seattle is its international hub for the Pacific Rim, and Alaska joined the One World Alliance, which is basically saying you can now code share with a whole host of international airlines and then Alaska becomes both their feeder for U.S. citizens traveling abroad, and then also the way they distribute passengers from international destinations to domestic destinations. So I think in the long run, we're going to have a better mix on that side of things in terms of international versus domestic. And then, it's up to, I know that some of our biggest business travel customers at the airport, Amazon and Microsoft, are starting to ratchet up business travel again, and so that'll help. But I think time will tell on that.
Hi, my name is Margie. And on the backs of the question that was just asked, I definitely I wanted us to be able to spend a little bit more time just answering that question. But when we use some of the buzzwords like diversity and equity, my question is gentrification is happening and a lot of communities of color are getting pushed further and further out. And so when I heard on the backs of there's space for new businesses, what is being actually done to make sure that businesses of color are actually welcomed in these cities? That's one question. And the other thing is, when I also look at the stage and representation, I'm curious, when we say community engagement, what does that mean? And how are the cities positioning communities of color to actually have some influence in decision-making, more so than what you want in a wish list, but how are you positioning these communities, and are they being invited to spaces like this?
Well, I'll comment in that. So in terms of including those who haven't historically been engaged in government, it's really important to intentionally invite them in. And first, that's the awareness of that. When you're sitting at a table with your peers trying to solve that policy question, that who isn't at the table that is in your community that you really want to make sure you serve well or hasn't been included. It's been my experience that when that happens, you actually will hear different ideas and different ways of approaching. In terms of, and I forget what your first question is, but it brought to me in time of COVID when, and I'm pointing to Chris, our economic development manager here, that when there were the PPA loans, and we have a significant number of small businesses whose first language was not English, There was a lot more barriers when there was such intense competition for those loans, right? So we didn't have those barriers. You were farther along the line than those other small businesses. So what was nice to see among city staff is they actually adjusted with that. And as you know, those paycheck protection loans, there were subsequent rounds of that. And we provided for consultants to make sure there was intentional outreach to those communities that had barriers so they weren't blocked immediately, because sometimes those grants were gone in 24 to 48 hours, and had the assistance immediately so that they could actually apply. So I think it's important to include people, not because you're going to hear new ideas that you haven't heard before when they weren't included. And then always, I think we need to constantly be aware of the changing in the environment, particularly with your demographics, and say, what do we need to change so that there is more equity in access to any of the resources we have, particularly when it comes to business assistance.
I would also just put a shout out in that to the chamber, because the chamber really helped our city a lot in the initial stages of COVID, when many of our minority business owners were really struggling to keep their businesses open, especially in the cases where there were language barriers. I feel like the chamber was a tremendous help to us to help really get all of the applications in the various languages that we needed. Our city's too small to really be able to accommodate for too much. We have a few that were helping us with some of our Spanish-speaking businesses, but for some of the other languages, it was just a tremendous help to us to have the chamber really engage with us on that. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. That was big.
A couple of other things, because I agree with my colleagues here. We've leveraged Highland College, which has a small business assistance program, and we've supported that, and that's been a great way for a lot of people of any color to understand business and succeed. The other one is, personally, myself, and I know Councilmember Nutting and Buxton, we engage with our owners, and we have a lot of business owners of color. And we make them feel welcome, and we find out ways we can help them, and we learn what their challenges are, so we can create policy that enhances that.
If I can add on this one, I appreciate SeaTac bringing on a community engagement manager. City of Tukwila has had one for about 7 years. We also work to help implement an idea called the community engagement folks. These folks that were speaking the language of our folks in our city. In our high school, Foster High School, 85 different languages spoken. It's very hard to reach out to everybody at the same time, but we've been working on that for years now. As far as diversity comes within the community, it's been my role through the council's appointment to bring different people onto our boards and commissions in our city to get recognition. We also have folks that go into the high schools and talk to them about what we're doing as a city for ethnicity and diversity. And we've been recognized by the state of Washington with an award for such training that we've done to our employees. We embrace all the businesses in our community, those that are small and those that are large. And when COVID hit, our economic development team went door to door to every single business, big, small, whatever, diversity, race, whatever, knocked on their door and told them about opportunities for small business loans, for grants and those type of things. So we made it a point to reach out to everybody in our community, and we still want to continue to do that. And are we there yet? We're working towards getting there, but we're working hard at it. So I'm proud of our community and our council for the things that they're doing to make that happen. Yeah.
So, I think about this question from the position of the folks up here, and probably many of you who maybe lead an organization. And I think there's a couple of aphorisms that I try to keep in mind with this stuff. The first is you measure what matters, right? So you think as a leader, here are my values. How do I put a number on those values? And in the case of the port, we're looking at diversity in contracting. How many of our contractors, subcontractors, by percentage of businesses and by percentage of dollar value, are WIMBY businesses? Then once you have that data point, then the second aphorism is to remember that a goal is a dream with a deadline, right? You're going to set some target and put a date on it that you want to achieve that. And then in our roles, it's not that, I mean, we want to be a part of the actual implementation of it. The fact is, we really rely on the professional staff in our institutions to do most of this work, and the folks that maybe we hire to contract to do some of this work. And so by setting that value and then giving a goal, a very specific goal, I think then what that allows staff to do is say they're unleashed to go and pursue these things. And for us, that has been a successful strategy for doing it, particularly on these cross-cutting things. They're not business lines for us. They're things that run across every aspect of our institution. And that's, you know, things like EDI and also environmental sustainability, where everyone in the institution has to be on board with it. And so requiring that everyone get the training to understand what it is that, what the problem is that we're trying to address, how we're trying to address it. You got to get total buy-in from the whole organization.
Thank you so much. We have just 2 more questions. We're going to narrow it down to one mayor or commissioner answering each question to wrap it up.
Hi, Tony Hetler from Normandy Park, work in Des Moines. How do nonprofits, how are they integral in your community, and how do they shape policy to build your community?
I can answer part of that, Tony. We have several nonprofits in Normandy Park that have been really instrumental, I think, in a lot of ways in bringing community together. And I think in just bringing people together, they've been able to be a big force for influencing policy. The ones that come to mind are our Friends of Normandy Park Foundation, and actually also our Yeti Foundation is a youth experiential training institute, and they work with our Highline Public Schools and kids in Normandy Park and throughout all of our surrounding cities. And that's, you know, it's just our neighbor, John Nilsson, you know, who just had a great idea and loved the outdoors and wanted to make sure that kids from all over really get to experience the outdoors. And he was able to put together a whole board, and, you know, a decade later, it's a big, thriving organization that I know the school system appreciates. And I think he's just been really instrumental in kind of leading the way, showing others how it's done. And so I think a lot of our local Normandy Park residents are very interested in getting involved with local nonprofits, and then through those nonprofits, sort of, whether it's just approaching the city council with ideas or showing up to meetings where they know there's a topic that they're particularly interested in. Again, I think it just always goes back to personal relationships. And so I would say in our small city, that means a lot. And our nonprofits have been doing a great job of just really getting engaged personally with individuals and sharing the enthusiasm for whatever their nonprofit is about. And I think through that relationship, we've seen a lot of great results. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Mayor Hohimer. We have one more question.
I struggled trying to figure out whether I should actually ask you guys this question. So I thank you for speaking. And I know that you said only one mayor, but I really need every mayor to, it's a yes or no one. And it's really a partnership that I'm asking for. The South End mayors did a signature on community restorative pathway. It's an important work that we as community are doing with young people and with communities of color. What I really want is for us to have an honest dialogue of what that work looks like, because it really feels like right now, government is arguing with other government. I'm not the county, I'm from community. And it's us that are doing the work with our own community. A community that each one of you that's sitting there also serves. So I'm literally begging for a partnership, because it's only a partnership that we can understand what is really happening. And you can't advocate for something that you yourself don't know. So I get how it came across, but the folks that are actually doing the work can prove the data to you. And we just need a chance to have a conversation. So my question to each one of you is, are you willing to actually have the conversation with us? Because right now, it doesn't, with the letter that came out, it doesn't feel that way for us in community. And the sister was right. A lot of us got moved to these areas. So these are our children. These are our community members. So I get it.
I'd love to meet with you, have that conversation. The signatories on that were by the strong mayors. There's different types of forms of government. We have, and you just wanted a yes, so the yes is yes. We'll have a conversation about it. But other mayors up here didn't sign that document.
Actually, I did sign it,
Oh,
and
thank you, Mayor.
absolutely, yes. I'd be glad to talk to you.
I would love to have the conversation. And I'm glad someone pointed out the flexibility that Mayor Ekberg may have over me. Because we have a council manager form of government where I don't have the same independence as Mayor Ekberg. And one of the things I'll just share with you is that, while I thought there were really good points, I did consider signing it. It's important to me as a mayor to reach consensus among my colleagues. It's just really important to me. And I think that's one of the reasons why people urged me to run, is because they wanted to see that. And I read a few of the points on your organization, and I think about school board member Garcia's question is one of my idols, Sandra Day O'Connor, who's a former Supreme Court justice, reminded people that the point of K-12 in the beginning was really civic education. And I really feel, and that when I was running, had this dream about engaging with kids in K-12 so that they realize that it's not the polarized debate that they see out there about this or that in a policy issue. But at the end of the day, if you want to get anything done, you have to collaborate and work together, and people don't see that enough. And so, I just bring that in terms of how I operate to approaching things like that statement. So even though I may not sign on it, now you know why I don't, is because if I hadn't given the opportunity for my council to discuss and get us all on the same page, because it's my mission for us to do that, then that's probably why I did not sign, but it doesn't mean that I don't agree with those points.
I'm going to echo Mayor Aragon. I'm also not a strong mayor, and we build consensus on our council before signing on to things like that. So, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
And same, I would be happy to have a conversation with you. But again, same thing, not a strong mayor. And often, because we're such a small city, we get kind of overlooked in some of the letters that get signed on. I'm often a little bit like, hey, how come nobody asked me? But I have to remember I'm not a strong mayor, and being in such a small city, those often don't come to my door, but I'm available, and I would love to meet. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. And then we're going to end on just one note very quickly. We'll go through the whole panel. What gives you the most optimism about where your city is headed, or the port, in your case, Commissioner Calkins? We'll start with you.
Young people, undoubtedly. There's just an incredible fire to this generation that's coming up. I think they are wise beyond their years and already have a vision for where we're headed. And so I am personally very optimistic about where we're going to be in 20 and 50 years under their leadership.
So for me, it's youth as well. It's our Opportunity Scholarship Program. It's our internship program that we run within the city. And it's our contract signage for the 2022 labor organizations. It's a documentation people can learn about all labor unions.
I'm really optimistic about our continuing conversations with the port about North SeaTac Park and protecting the park in perpetuity.
Ditto.
I also am very optimistic because of the youth that are so engaged in Normandy Park. But specifically, and just to offer something different, I'm really excited about our neighborhood kind of, we declared this summer the Summer of Neighboring, and we've got 12 different neighborhood communities that are all just really seeking to get re-engaged in coming out of COVID and really, really get to know each other. And so through lots of summer block parties and so forth, we've just done a great job and are continuing, I think, to do an even better job of really getting out and getting to know one another. I feel like that's where the best change happens in the world, is when you have earned the right to be heard in just getting to know one another and hearing one another's stories. So looking forward to that.
I think we have a great opportunity for everybody.
I think what I'm optimistic about is when I look at our council, even though we can have really intense conversations, we take hard issues head on. And we're really open about those. And when I said before, when I did my overview, that when it comes to someone's life, how long they live or their quality of life, if you followed everything your doctor said and saw them regularly, that really only is about 20% of influence of what will happen to you. And the other 50% are education, employment, income, that family and social support, community safety, clean air and water, housing and transit. That's 50% of what will happen to you and how long you live and the quality of your life. And I'm proud that our council kind of takes all of that head on.
Great. Thank you all so much for participating with us tonight and for engaging with our audience and for the wonderful presentations about your cities and the port. And thank you for everything that you do every day on behalf of your communities and serving the citizens of the region. We really appreciate you.